when President Trump says, you better hurry up before you lose your country, he's not kidding. They're not going away, and they're not going to let go of that business model without the efforts of we the people. Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast on this Tuesday night, March 11th, for episode number 188, A New World Order. And when I say a new world order, I mean it's a new world order. We're in a paradigm shift, and a paradigm shift of this nature leaves most of the voices that we've been listening to rather inadequate to the task of interpreting the changes that are going on, because the changes are happening outside their frame of reference. Therefore, they make statements like, President Trump is chaotic. There's no rhyme or reason to what he's doing. It's tanking the markets. And it's because of President Trump, President Trump, President Trump. That's one refrain. Then there's another refrain. This is being done to rob the country for billionaires. We'll talk about these issues tonight, try to bring some clarity to it. We're a political action community. So the reason we have these discussions is so when you're talking to your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your family members, we want to have the arguments or the explanations which help people put these changes into some frame of reference, allowing them to understand them in a positive way. Because what's going on is extraordinarily positive. Extraordinarily positive. What's happening is the old order, which was called the New World Order or the post-World War II Democrat liberal order, it is coming to its end, and it's being replaced by a new order, a multipolar world, which we really don't understand yet how it's going to take shape. We just know that we're in a transition from the old to the new. And the point of tonight's podcast is to look at some of these changes, look at how people are trying to maintain what they had, and how the shift is creating new opportunities for we the people, for every American citizen. How the threat of increased prices is being used to scare people, how people are now being told that Social Security is going to end, Medicare is going to end, Medicaid is going to end. You know, these are threats that are being brought to the attention of we the people, which really have no basis yet in any kind of legislative effort. It's just a bunch of scare tactics to distract me from what's really scaring me, which is the people who are losing power. And these are significant people with significant resources who've been working on a project for decades. What are they going to do as they see their project slipping away, being put into the dustbin of history by this outsider president, Donald J. Trump? And at the beginning of every show, I want to urge all of you to get involved in your local political party, because Donald Trump is a once in 100-year, maybe once in a 200-year leader. He's not a very good politician. He's a leader who is bringing about a paradigm shift. What happens in the midterms and in the next presidential election? Who's going to have the back, not just of Donald Trump, but of these changes, which really what we're going to talk about are so positive for our country, if we could just see them for what they are, which is freeing us, freeing we the people, finally, from the British business model of slavery, drugs, and piracy. Yes, that's what President Trump is doing. He's freeing us from debt slavery, drugs, illegal and legal, addiction of all the people, everybody, and piracy, the endless forever war. He's changing that paradigm, which goes back into antiquity. So, of course, those centers of power, which have profited from this business model, who have behind the scenes been controlling world events, using that business model to enslave first chattel slavery and now debt slavery, enslaving the people, enslaving them to debt slavery, enslaving them to drug use and unhealth, and then enslaving the people to fight a forever war to defend democracy. Those folks that profit from that business model, they're not going away, and they're not going to let go of that business model without the efforts of we the people. Donald Trump puts his pants legs on just like you do. He's not a superhero. He's not imbued with Superman's powers. 78 years old. You're watching this, you're 35, 40 years old. This is your future that this is being, he's recreating a future for you. What are you willing to do to assist? And how do I know and how do you know that you're not the next Donald Trump if you don't get out on the track and give it a try? See, this is what's beautiful about our political system. All of us get a shot to self-govern. And then where we go with it, it's not up to us. It's not up to me. I just get in the batter's box every day and I take the best whacks at that ball that I can. That's why I'm doing this podcast with you tonight. I'm taking my best shot, and it's going to be watched by thousands of people. And I'm saying to each one of you, please get involved. We're going to make it easier for you. The websites are going to be filled out. My ace digital assistant, Mr. Chris, who shows up in the live chat from time to time, is preparing the kind of web services that will allow us to form a community more easily. Well, President Trump paused that Ukraine aid, and he didn't just pause it, he stopped it. Uh, will it ever be restarted? I guess that depends on the circumstances on the ground. Let me tell you the difference between an ideologue and a pragmatist. An ideologue does things without respect to the facts on the ground. An ideologue believes so much in their ideology that regardless of the feedback or the facts, they're going to continue down that road. That would be like Representative Thomas Massey, who a lot of people have a lot of good things to say about, and I do too, but he's an ideologue. He has a way of going about his business. He's not going to change that based on the facts on the ground. Very similarly, in the Ukraine, President Trump has modified what has been a broad bipartisan consensus. The Uni Party has been all in on this war in the Ukraine for years. 1805, Britain attacked Russia in Russia. 1812, France, Napoleon attacked Russia in Russia, burning Moscow to the ground. 1853, the British attacked again the Crimean War. 1917, Russia was occupied by Western powers, including we the people. We put 13,000 American troops in the city of Vladivostok. 1942, Operation Barbarossa. The Germans attacked Russia. I think 28 million Russian deaths were the result of that invasion. And the Germans came very close to occupying the country. We had the Cold War. Now we got this war. So the broad bipartisan consensus among what I would call the Atlanticists or the globalists about fighting with Russia, this is the great game of politics. England attacked Russia. France attacked Russia. Germany attacked Russia. And these are the same groups today that dominate the European Union and are arrayed against the Russians yet again. And President Trump is saying, hey, you know what? Hey, my name is Paul, and it's between y'all. I'm going to try to bring peace. I'm speaking for President Trump. He is going to both sides, and he's saying, hey, sit down. In fact, I think he said, sit down before it's too late. Thank you, was I think is the exact quote he posted up on Truth Social. And what's happening? The aid has stopped. Guess what? The Ukrainians are collapsing because without U.S. aid, um, they can't make it. They have that salient in the Kursk region where the Ukrainians occupied a big portion of Russia as a bargaining chip for a presumed settlement. Well, that unfortunate band of Ukrainian fighters, and they are brave and they are valiant, they've been encircled and they've been cut into two groups, and the Russians are going to kill them all or capture them all. That's over. In the Ukraine itself, the Russian advance continues inch by bloody inch, which is the Russian style of warfare. Without American aid, when President Trump says, you better hurry up before you lose your country, he's not kidding. And this is going to go pretty quickly. Now, it's not a surprise that President Zelensky said this past week that the Oval Office blow-up was, quote-unquote, regrettable, adding that he stands ready to work with President Trump's strong leadership, that's a quote, strong leadership, to get a lasting peace. Zelensky understands that his future, the future of his country now, needs to be addressed at a peace talk because the Russians are using this cessation of U.S. aid to advance and advance quickly. Now, probably one of the most dangerous moments in world history because the United States is not offering assistance to Ukraine, and Ukraine still has a lot of military hardware in inventory that was transferred to it by the Biden administration before its end. They're using it without restriction. There was an attack just last night on the city of Moscow. That would be the capital of Russia. That'd be like we all woke up this morning and there was buildings burning in Washington, D.C. because of an attack, let's say, by the Mexican drug cartels. Oh, that pissed people off, wouldn't it? Think that would get people to the next level of intensity? So we're in a very ultra dangerous moment, and we're going to have to pray for peace. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for creating the light and the dark. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for creating me in your image. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for making me an American. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for making me free. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for healing the blind. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for releasing the bound. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for raising up the downtrodden. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for creating the heavens and earth. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for providing for all my needs. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for directing my path. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for our American courage. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for crowning America with glory. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for restoring strength to the weary. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds. Thank you for sending your only Son to die on the cross that I might be saved. Forgive me, my Father, for I have sinned. Pardon me, my King, for I have willfully transgressed. For you pardon and forgive. Blessed are you, God, and King of all worlds, who is gracious and ever willing to forgive. At times like this, when affairs are beyond my control, and I'm humbled in my inability to determine the outcome, it's a great moment because I can rely on my faith. Now, I recognize that not everybody watching this believes in God, and that's what's so great about republicanism. So if you're a leftist and you're watching and you don't believe in God, you're welcome here. You're welcome here in this Republican country. Not, I don't mean the party. I mean the Republic of the United States of America that stands on the philosophy of republicanism, a philosophy where you are the sovereign of your own life and your rights are protected. So it's such a phenomenal philosophy. It allows dissenting views to come into the public square, and the competition for ideas is intended to determine the best possible outcomes. And in a paradigm shift where we've lived for 100 years or more in an idea about a progressive movement towards world governance, one world economy, one world currency. This has been a plan that is very old, this plan. And it probably has both negative and positive reasons why the plan was put in place. Because there was many people who made the plan. Some were evil. Some thought, well, this is a great way to increase the economic prosperity of the majority of the world's population and damp down the violence which has associated itself with mankind since Cain slew Abel. So I'm not going to demonize the idea of globalism. As I've said, it waxes and wanes with nationalism. But the costs of globalism have gotten so high. We, the people, have asked for modification in electing Donald Trump. He wasn't hiding what he was going to do when he was running to be our president and when we voted for him, we, the people, a popular vote victory. 7 swing states all voting for Donald Trump. The Democrat wants to say it wasn't a mandate or a landslide. Yeah, okay, great. He won, and he's going to call it anything he wants to because right now he's the president. And he's changing the paradigm, which a vast percentage of the population want, even if they voted Democrat. They want change because the current formation of governance, slavery, drugs, and piracy, it's not working for the people. We're unwell, physically, spiritually, emotionally, unwell. We're in debt. I'm in debt. Are you in debt? I'm in debt. I don't like it. I don't want to be in debt. I want to have equity. I don't want to be on drugs. I want to be free. And I certainly don't want my children overseas fighting in wars of discretion for profit. So even if you're on the left, you hold so many of these ideas. Also, there's a chance for a new unification of our people if we could get by the almost mindless yammering of pundits who have no idea what's going on. They just don't have the experience. They didn't read about this in their textbooks when they were getting their college degrees. This requires the experience of a man of the world like Donald Trump, who's been all over the world, done business, understands how the system works, and is seeking to make changes to that system so we're free. That is cool, in my opinion.
Ren was stone cold broke, and now they have a lot of money. And that's going to be the next thing you'll be talking about is Iran. What's going to happen with Iran? And there'll be some interesting days ahead. That's all I can tell you. We're down to final strokes with Iran. That's going to be an interesting time. And we'll see what happens. But we're down to the final moments. We're at final moments. Can't let them have a nuclear weapon. I think that I would have had a deal within 1 month after the rigged election of 2020. They were all set to make a deal. And then when I lost, they saw this person who's a stupid person, very stupid person. And they said, let's not make a deal. And they were right. He took the sanctions off. They became rich under Biden. They went from having no money to having $300 billion. all in a short period. It's oil. Oil builds up fast. It's a nice living if you have a nice oil well. And they do. They have a lot of nice oil wells, right? So anyway, it's going to be a big thing. It's an interesting time in the history of the world, but we have a situation with Iran that something's going to happen very soon, very, very soon. You'll be talking about that pretty soon, I guess, and hopefully we can have a peace deal. You know, I'm not speaking out of strength or weakness. I'm just saying I'd rather see a peace deal than the other, but the other will solve the problem.
Mr. President, your ally.
Well, that's a rather chilling clip of President Trump letting us know what's going to happen next, just as he did on the tariff issue in the long run up to his victory. All these people are running around with their hair on fire about tariffs. We'll talk about that shortly. But I want to talk about this Iran issue. You know, this is all tied into an order that had been developing, which was about China operating a new political contratemp to the West, the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and most importantly, the Iron Triangle, the alliance that could never be broken between Russia, Iran, and China. That was the military core of this effort China has been making to counter Western hegemony. And there was a couple other allied countries in that military alliance. One's North Korea and the other one is Syria, which is no more. So they've lost already one of their members. Russia now is in a process of reestablishing diplomatic relations with the United States. The European Union, as we're going to talk about shortly, is doing everything it can to make sure that there is not going to be a peace. These old centers of power in Europe, and there are allies here in the United States. There are allies of these people right in our Republican Party, right in Minnesota, right in SD45, where I practice politics. Yes, there are allies, and I have to say, some of these people that are allied with this business model of slavery, drugs, and piracy, I wish they'd watch the podcasts because they don't know what they're doing. It's probably why Christ has that famous, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. We've got some of these people around that believe passionately without any basis in understanding history or geopolitics or economy. They're just brainwashed. But they have a vote. See, that is a problem with democracy. In democracy, we all have a vote whether we're paying attention or not. And when you dumb people down and you don't teach them geopolitics, you don't teach them political economy, and they go to vote, what do they vote for? Themselves. What do I get out of it? And there's nothing wrong with that, because if I'm not for myself, who will be? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And that's what this country has become. We're only for ourselves. What are we? And we've become part of a very terrible business model which requires people to die all over the world so that we can see a high stock market. Look what happens when President Trump starts to fiddle with this. Well, we're going to talk about that for the rest of the podcast. But I'm going to tell you, why is the stock market down? Why is the stock market down? That's because the wealthiest people in this country shorted the market to make them look bad, so you get afraid about your 401k. So you run for the exits and sell off. And you know what they're going to do? In addition to shaking your faith in President Trump, when the market goes down 25, 30 points, they're just going to come in and buy up your shares at pennies on the dollar. You're going to get clipped out. They're going to make a ton of money. So they get a twofer. They get to shake the people's confidence in this paradigm change. Oh my God, the stock market's down. President Trump said during this transition, don't pay too close of attention to that, because he knows people like Warren Buffett and his ilk are pulling their money out of the market, pulling their money out of Tesla, pulling their money out of all kinds of different companies in the hopes of stopping President Trump from changing their globalist paradigm. President Trump is dealing with a lot of issues all at once. Back to this iron triangle where Russia's coming out of its cocoon, reestablishing diplomatic relations with the United States. Not certain it's going to happen. That's why I pray. Because, when the Ukrainians are using Western arms to attack the city of Moscow, the outcomes are not quite clear. Because wouldn't I be pissed off if I woke up this morning in my city of St. Paul, Minnesota, my capital city, was burning because some drug cartel terrorist blew it up? Yeah, I'd be pissed. I'd be looking for revenge. And that's what happens when people get killed. We seek revenge. So we're subject to all kinds of unknowns now. Unknowns. False flags. The unexpected. We, the people, have to be ready for the unexpected. For example, yesterday, you probably know, X was overwhelmed for a short period of time by a cyber attack, taking it offline. I mean, we were trying to post up shorts for my @ProfPen podcast handle there on X, and we couldn't do it because the thing wasn't working. That kind of freaked us out around the campfire here. But President Trump is foreshadowing a deal with Iran, like he's trying to make a deal with the Soviet Union, now called Russia. Same people. Same people. Same thing going back to 1805. He's trying to make a deal with the Russians. He's offering the Iranians a deal. But he is arming the Israelis to the teeth. There's been an almost $12 billion arms transfer to Israel just since the Trump administration started on January 20th. Let me put this into some context for you. Iran's annual military budget for 2024 is estimated to be around $16.7 billion. So in a month, Israel has gotten 2/3 of Iran's annual budget in arms from the United States. Israel has its own military budget. And guess what? We, the people, take a look at the map and where the U.S. military bases are. Iran is surrounded. And it seems to me, because President Trump is saying that Iran can't have a nuclear bomb, I'm going to say they probably already have one. It's the means of delivering it that is the big controversy. And President Trump is just telling them, you better cut a deal or we're going to lay you to waste. So we're in a paradigm shift because these conflicts in the Middle East have been in place since the British and the French chopped up the region with the Sykes-Picot Agreement at the time of the fall of the Ottoman Empire. Something you could please go read about. I just want to go through these arms sales, and Tanner's going to put these up as we go through them. This is all since President Trump sat in the chair. Japan. They've got a transfer of $900 million for SM-6 Block 1 missiles. Egypt, fast missile craft modernization, $625 million. Egypt again, long-range radars. Oh, that's great, $304 million. Here's Kuwait. Design and construction services in the amount of $1 billion. Here's Israel. Hellfire missiles for $660 million. They should have made it $666 million, gone all the way. Romania. GBU 39B small diameter bombs for $84 million. It's a small piece. Romania's in the news. Israel. Caterpillar D9 bulldozers. Oh, that's cool. $295 million. They make those down in Texas. Israel. Munitions and munitions support for $2.04 billion. Israel again. Munitions, guidance kits, and munitions support. This time for $675.7 million. Here's Israel again. Munitions, guidance kits, fusions, and munitions support. This time, oh, listen to this, a whopping $6.75 billion. So
That's a lot of money.
that is a lot of transfers in a month. A lot. A lot. And as much as President Trump, I think, really wants peace, he's inherited a paradigm that lives on war and the death of human beings. And he's sitting here and he's looking at that and he remembers John Kennedy. Hey, he was alive when John Kennedy was turned into a piñata, and RFK and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. He understands there's been 2 assassination attempts that we know about. Just since I saw you last, there was a man shot and killed at the White House. The story, suppressed because there's no more information about it, the story was the man was exercising his right to die by cop. Who knows? I wasn't there. You weren't there. We don't know what happened. So these are very difficult times we live in, and it's very difficult for President Trump. His bravery, his courage, really incomprehensible. Now, one could say, when you go for it, you prepare yourself to die. As I played in the last podcast, Bruce Lee, Master the Art of Dying. Once we do that, I think about that every day now. Being ready to go at any minute. Being resolved, being saved. So that if I just have a few seconds left of consciousness, those few seconds are of faith and not of unbelief. President Trump, he's resolved. He's committed. That's what we need to do as a people, as a political community, if we're going to change this paradigm. Because obviously, there's a lot of pushback coming, more and more every day. In Syria, where an al-Qaeda offshoot led by al-Jolani was backed by the Turks, who are our NATO allies, which means we the people knew about it and funded this thing. Yes, we the people are mortal enemies, allegedly al-Qaeda. They're actually on the payroll. We've talked about it on the podcast. They've been on the payroll going back to the Mujahideen, who were armed and funded by the CIA when Russia, then called the Soviet Union, same thing, invaded Afghanistan and erected their own leader, Najibullah. And we armed these Afghans who are tough, defeated the British Empire twice, then defeated the Russians and expelled them from their country with help from the United States. They've always been on our payroll. Always. Perhaps bin Laden was a ideologue who popped up out of nowhere and led that group. His leadership being unique, kind of like Donald Trump. His leadership is unique. If we are not in the political process after Donald Trump leaves the stage, the Uni Party is going to reemerge and take control again. What the Trump team is doing is they're trying to wreck everything these people have built up for decades as fast as they can. And when they say they're taking a sledgehammer to it, when they say, well, we're okay with some tariffs are good, but not this chaos, they're just fighting to hang on to the globalist order that has been created since 46, maybe since 13, maybe since the 1880s. Maybe we got to dial it all the way back to the sacrifice on the cross, because there's been a counter movement since the idea of loving your neighbor as you wish to be loved was introduced into our world. We don't understand, really, I don't think, as people, how powerful that idea is. But I think that what President Trump is trying to say is we don't have to kill each other, and we don't have to be poor. We can have peace and prosperity, and all they're going to do is attack him for that. He wants peace and prosperity. No, nope. They're going to find every way they can. When I say they, I mean Republicans and Democrats both from the Uni Party, like Tom Tillis, Senator Cornyn attacks us, Roger Wicker of Mississippi, and I got a whole bunch of them here in Minnesota, the Nikki Haley lovers. They're working against President Trump. They're just sneaky about it. They don't have the courage to come out into the light. They're putting on MAGA hats and acting like they're down with the program. They're seeing what they can get out of it for concessions. So in Syria, where we got this El Jolani, he's rebranded himself now. He's got a new name. I'm going to stick with El Jolani. These Al-Qaeda types are now practicing ethnic cleansing. They're machine gunning civilians, Alawite minority in Syria. And you say to yourself, why was this allowed to happen? Well, you can see it from how governments react to an Al-Qaeda offshoot. The UK, that'd be the British, the center of this evil. The British have lifted sanctions on 24 Syrian entities, including the central bank, in a landmark move that could be a turning point for Syria's devastated economy. Doesn't that sound loving? They have a devastated economy, and here comes the British lifting up the sanctions so that the Syrians can rebuild their war-torn country. Sounds so loving and kind. But actually, a Shia-aligned regime, that would be the Bashar al-Assad regime, and remember there's two groups in the Islamic world, the Sunnis and the Shias. They don't get along. And they didn't get along for a long time, long before the British showed up on the scene. The British and their Cambridge and Oxford educated anthropologists, who they sent into the region to figure it out, exacerbated those pre-existing tensions, the way they drew borders and the way they armed groups, because their plan was to make these people hate each other and kill each other, arming both sides, so that they could rule the region with a very minimal, investment of resources. And it's been very effective for the West. So a Shia-aligned regime, aligned with the Iranians, which means aligned with the Iron Triangle, was suddenly overthrown after a decade of war. Iraq, which has a border with Syria, is Shia. Iran is Shia. So what the British are doing is they're helping a Sunni regime get entrenched in the region to continue that perturbation of these groups so they can continue their ongoing efforts to control, extract, and exploit the people of that region with impunity. Same thing's going on in Europe. Could you please play number 3?
Firstly, in view of the continuing increase in the threat situation, we are aware that Europe, and with Europe the Federal Republic of Germany, must now make very great efforts very quickly to strengthen the defense capability of our country and the European continent. We are counting on the United States of America to continue to stand by our mutual alliance obligations in the future. But we also know that the funds for our national and collective defense must now be significantly expanded. As parliamentary groups of the CDU, CSU and SPD, we will therefore introduce a motion in the German Bundestag next week that will amend the basic law to exempt the necessary defense expenditure from the federal budget of the Federal Republic of Germany. That is above an amount equivalent to 1% of our GDP from the restrictions of the debt brake. I want to make it very clear that, in view of the threats to our freedom and peace on our continent, must now also apply to our defense, whatever it takes. That is why we want to set up a credit-financed immediate program, a special fund of 500 billion euros for the next 10 years, from which these necessary investments will be made. We assume that we will also trigger private investments on a large scale with this special fund.
That dude's name is Merz. He is the presumed next leader of the German government. He is kind of a neocon type. He's like a conservative Republican in the model of, let's say, Tom Emmer, Julia Coleman, Kristen Robbins, Adam Schwartzy, a supporter of the forever war. And he's proving President Trump was correct, that the Europeans were not living up to their own defense obligations under the NATO alliance. Now that President Trump has said, I'm out, well, these people are coming up big time with money. This fiscal package that Merz was talking about is equal roughly to 10% of the German GDP. It's a big investment in debt to build weapons of war. Interestingly, he might not be able to pull this off. This goes back to the last podcast where we were looking at Ursula the Sea Witch, talking about how she was sure that this was all going to work out. Actually, there's two parties in Germany that control considerable political power, the Greens on the left and the Alternative for Deutschland on the right. Both of these parties are not down with this. They're not down with it. They're not down with the forever war. They want peace and prosperity for the German people. They're not caught up in this old paradigm, which is in the process of being deconstructed. So this is an unknown outcome. Really can't tell if the Europeans can get it together to spend all this money or not. They haven't done it for the last 75 years, and it's quite an adjustment for them. You know, guns or butter, right? They're to the guns or butter moment now. What you want to have, butter or guns? Hey, make a choice. That's where we are as a people. We've been choosing both guns and butter for so long. We're $37 trillion in debt. Come on. It doesn't work. Doesn't work for the regular people. It works for the billionaires. Money goes uphill. This shit comes downhill. Thanks, Tanner. Meanwhile, going back to this Iran thing, you know, a paradigm shift makes strange bedfellows. Suddenly, President Putin is telling President Trump that he'd like to be the mediator in the talks with Iran. He'd like to help bring about a peaceful settlement, avoiding bloodshed as regards Iran's nuclear program. Of course, the Israelis want nothing to do with that. They just want to let loose, you know, the dogs of war. But, you know, Trump wants peace. Putin is saying, I'll help you. Trump sent a letter to the Ayatollah asking for fresh nuclear negotiations. His quote, there's two ways of stopping them, that being the Iranians, with bombs or a written piece of paper. Iran claimed that they never got a letter and they rejected any further negotiations with the United States. Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. We don't know if the letter got there, and I don't think that they're going to long-term avoid these negotiations. At least that's my prayer, you know, thanking God that there is peaceful outcomes, that this paradigm can shift without a world war. It's going to take our efforts to get there. I mean, if we leave these people, these elected representatives, to their own devices, we'll go to war. It's only going to be the consistent, politically organized efforts of we the people to go into these parties and root out these neocon war hawks. That's the only way we're going to get out of this thing. possibly alive, in my opinion. Well, on to the economy, which is closely related because it's political economy and its backbone is the war machine. Let's have a little moment of levity.
Our nation's face-off matchup is underway, and the gloves are off. Matthew Tkachuk and Brandon Hagel. Hagel from Tampa Bay, Tkachuk from Florida. Did not see this coming. Hagel skated away as he got back up, imploring the crowd to get even more vocally involved if that's possible. And this start, if you can call it that, have we even started, reminiscent of the old days. Little chat at the start. Hagel and Matthew Tkachuk drop right off the hop. And I'm telling you, Sean, I'm standing down here, and I think there's zero chance that we see the puck hit the ice for more than 1 second before we're going to see both Tkachuk brothers sitting in the same penalty box. Well, Brady's out there, and Sam Bennett, who's been thrust into their lineup tonight, he did not play against Sweden, is taking the face-off. He's clearly in there to help match the United States physicality. Brings a lot of grit, a lot of sandpaper. This was set up. And here they come, Ray, you're right. Right before the first Tkachuk fight, this was set up. Here you go. Bennett in the lineup for the first time. Brady gets the better of this one. Sam Bennett, 8 years a teammate of Matthew Tkachuk in both Calgary and the last 3 in Florida, fighting Matthew's brother Brady. When the first face-off was about to hit the ice, Brady Tkachuk yelled across to Bennett, and he said, "Hey, Benny, after this, we're going." And so the change was made. Bennett jumped on the ice, and 3 seconds, 2 fights, and we thought it would be a wild night here in Montreal. We're off to this start. Well, Matthew Tkachuk was asked after the game against Finland about the booing of the U.S. anthem. He said, "I don't like it." Team USA said they use it as a motivator. Coaches and players on both sides said they hoped it wouldn't happen tonight. It did. It's helped set the tone. Charlie McAvoy put one on net. Now we're 9 seconds in. We had a fight 2 seconds in, another one 1 second later. Now in the center of the action, it's Colton Parayko and JT Miller. Parayko's got a big size advantage. Miller's a tough dude, and this is like 1996 when this building opened up with the World Cup. That was the last time the United States won the major best-on-best international competition, 1996 here.
That's good, Tanner. Thank you very much. That is a Team Canada versus Team USA hockey game, which was played or fought right after President Trump announced the 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. Those fights, having played hockey, pretty hard to hurt somebody on skates. Looks very violent, doesn't it? It's not really that threatening. Occasionally somebody gets knocked out. For the most part, it's a bunch of scrum. It's performative, kind of like Representative Al Green on the floor during the State of the Union address, pointing his gold-headed cane. He didn't cane anybody with that cane. It was show and tell, the kind of show and tell. But it's fun, and it pretty much, for me, typifies this tariff spat between the United States and Canada. It's performative. And the outcome for me is really pretty clear. I have a pretty clear sense of where we're heading with this stuff. Where we're heading is about revenue. It's not about trade wars. It's not about raising the price for American citizens on episodic purchases of goods. And when Howard Lutnick, our Commerce Secretary, tries to explain there's a difference between prices and inflation, people don't have the economic background to understand the difference because the tires that we sell you on TireGet. And please go to TireGet.com and 11 different brands. The price is right. The price may go up. The price may not go up. I don't know because we don't understand the currency offsets and the supplier discounting and all the different things that are going to happen associated with this new tariff regime, which is not about trade war. It's not about picking on Mexico and Canada. It's not about picking on the Europeans. When President Trump starts talking about people ripping us off, he is providing what they would call red meat for the base. It's about revenue. We're broke. We're broke. And if you think that stock market collapse that happened yesterday and has been going on for the last few weeks was intense, imagine if President Trump stood up in front of the cameras and said, "My fellow citizens, we're bankrupt. The stock market go down 40%. He can't say that. I can say it because, I'm not the president of the United States. I'm a political commentator. So he's telling the truth. We have been getting ripped off. There is big differences between what different countries charge for entry taxes. We have lost factories and millions of manufacturing jobs since NAFTA. We do have a tremendous deficit. We do have problems. He's telling the truth about it. He's just leaving out the punchline. We have to raise revenue or we're going to go broke. And if we go broke, because 60% of our citizens don't have anything, they wouldn't know the difference other than their payments might not come from the government. There might not be Social Security. There might not be payments. Everything would have to get restructured under duress. What President Trump is doing is restructuring, changing the paradigm, restructuring it consensually, proactively before the ass falls off the donkey. But again, we got ideologues. We got people that they could be sitting in Congress, allegedly our leaders, who have no idea what to do or how to get from where we are to where we need to get to. Let's listen to Rand Paul, somebody I respect. Let's listen to him talk.
Yet to have a business from Kentucky come to me and say they want tariffs. Bourbon industry thinks it'll be hard. Retaliatory tariffs will hurt them. Farmers think retaliatory tariffs will hurt them. Automobile industry thinks steel, aluminum tariffs will hurt them. Home builders think home prices will be higher with lumber, retaliatory or tariffs on lumber from Canada. Steel tariffs, we get a lot of steel from Canada as well. Average price of cars going up $9,000, $10,000. You see immediately there was a retreat on cars because the stock market was going, oh my God, this is going to devastate the car industry. We have transporters, UPS, DHL in my state. All the people who are involved with business in my state, not one of them has come to me and said, please put tariffs on it, it'll help us. Almost every industry in Kentucky has come to me and said, it will hurt our industry and push up prices of homes, cars. And so I'm going to continue to argue against tariffs. I hope they'll not go in place, and I hope they won't cause a recession. But already they're talking about exemptions because even the people for them acknowledge that there are real problems with tariffs.
What's going to be exempted in an exemption process that is not yet announced is raw materials for the production of goods here in the United States, like in the tire business. We try to sell as many American-made tires as we can on TireGet.com. But if you call in and you talk to me, the first thing I'm going to say to you is, are you willing to spend twice as much for an American-made product? Because it is twice as much, 100% more. That is how much the imports are undercutting domestic build. And only 20% of the tires that you and I buy for our vehicles are made in this country. 80% are imported. 80%. 80%. And the tire business is representative of all industries. So what Rand Paul is talking about, he's a doctor. I'm sure if I had some kind of doctorate issue, I would trust him. He doesn't understand what President Trump is doing. His constituents, of course, are calling up and saying the big companies that have access to him. Because the little people like me, I can't get Rand Paul on the phone. But, Jack Daniels can call him. And what Jack Daniels has been making money for hundreds of years, here's what businesses want. If you're making money, you don't want anything to change because you're making money. And who's making money? The biggest and the boldest are making money. Everybody else is getting ready to go bankrupt because of this Bidenomics that we've suffered. Now, Rand Paul is saying, I don't want tariffs. I'm going to continue to argue against tariffs. Okay, Rand, you're a doctor. Patient shows up and you go through the diagnostics. They present with symptoms. You don't make any judgments until you get back blood work, MRIs, CAT scans, biopsies. You get everything back that you need. You make a diagnosis and you say to the patient, hey, I got some bad news for you. You have a XYZ. I don't even like to say it because, naming things, words are things. That's why they call it spelling, because you're casting a spell. So we're going to leave the word out. You've got XYZ. That's the bad news. The good news is, if you take my course of treatment that I'm going to prescribe for you, you have an 80% chance of surviving this for at least 5 years. But this course of treatment, pretty tough. You're not going to feel very good. In fact, the course of treatment, it could kill you. But we know from our statistics, from our history, you have an 80% chance of surviving this deadly condition from which you suffer. Rand Paul expects the patient to say, oh, yes, doctor, I'll take your course of treatment. Well, see, now the doctor is President Trump. Dr. Trump. Trump Dai Fu. If you want to use a Chinese word. The doctor. It's the doctor. The patient is we the people in our political economy, which has generated $37 trillion of federal debt and all kinds of debt at the state levels. If you add all the debt up and then you get into the consumer debt, if you get into all the debt that's going on, we're indebted. We're indebted so heavily that we're going to lose our currency, our freedom. In fact, President Biden signed numerous orders to hurry the introduction of central bank digital currency because I believe it was their plan to destroy our economic independence as sovereign citizens by using this debt as a weapon against we the people because it's debt slavery. We're in debt. Somebody's got to pay the bill. So when you got to restructure that bill, there's cost. The cost is, hey, we're going to take everything you have. It's called collateral. We're going to give you back a digital token in return. And that digital token, we're going to know everything you do. And if we don't like what you do, we're going to turn your money off. So you better comply. That's where we were heading. And there's fairly good evidence for it if you go look for it. Now, some of you are going to say, oh, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. Just go read the Federal Register. It's in the Federal Register. What is the Federal Register? It's the daily newspaper of the United States government, federalregister.gov. Everything in there that's news that your government does, all the news that's fit to print is in that daily Federal Register. You go put in their central bank, CBDC, and you're going to see we were well on the way to getting there. And one could say that debt is dependent on access to future energy inventory. I want you to think about what I'm saying. If you go into debt as a business, as a country, as a state, as a person, to pay that debt off, You have to have access to the energy that is required for you to service that debt. If they take the energy away, you have to go bankrupt. For example, you have a home mortgage and a car loan, and suddenly you can't drive to work because your car is taken away from you. How are you going to get to work to pay off that debt? You're not going to be able to. They're going to foreclose on your home. They're going to take your car away. And that's exactly what our elites had been setting up for us with what President Trump calls the Green New Scam, the Green New Deal, all over the country, every state, because there's nothing more globalist than energy. Politicians are starting to wake up to, the citizens haven't woke up to it yet, but the politicians are starting to wake up to the fact that they have signed on to an energy strategy, like here in Minnesota with Xcel Energy, where Xcel was the first electricity provider in the country to decarbonize under the reign of Mr. Ben Folk from 2011 to 2021. We've decarbonized here. And as Julia Coleman, our state senator, said, every state senator is all good with clean energy. Well, really, how's that going to work, Julia? Because our president is not down with it. And for example, Xcel Energy is expecting $5.6 billion of tax credits promised to them by Biden to make their energy strategy workable in the years to come. What if President Trump says, no, we're not giving you that money? What's going to happen to my electricity costs here at the Professor Penn household? They're going to go through the roof. That's what's going to happen. Every state has this problem. Pennsylvania has it. Texas has it. And it's exacerbated by these new data centers that are being planned and in construction all around the country to house this artificial intelligence thing that's breaking out everywhere. I think a very prominent local politician, elected representative, told me that if we approved here in Minnesota the construction of new nuclear power plants today, they still wouldn't be constructed in time to stave off blackouts in a state where it's not unusual for it to be 10 below zero. Hey, kind of a problem, isn't it, Julia? Kind of a problem, which you all support. And this is going on. It's not just Minnesota. The political class all over this country, Republicans who collaborated with the greenie communists, for whatever reasons, they all had their own reasons. Maybe some of them believed in climate change. I don't know. Maybe some of them were in on the scam. Because when you change the paradigm of fossil fuels to green energy, well, think about all the money that got made on that program. Pennsylvania's got a huge problem. Texas, where I'm very involved, has a tremendous energy shortfall. Texas needs, to meet its energy demands, the construction of 30 new nuclear power plants. 30. Isn't that crazy? That's just crazy. The state grid is projecting in Texas that peak power demand will jump by 75% by 2030. Infrastructure can be built fast enough because of it can't be built. It cannot be built. They can't build it, even if they say, yes, we're going to build it, because of supply chain issues. There's long wait times for things like big turbines and key equipment like transformers. They can't keep up with it. Now, I'm going to tell you my opinion about this. President Trump is staving off a disaster. If you don't have access to energy, you can't service your debts, which means an economic collapse of biblical proportions was guaranteed by the actions of these politicians that are there because we're not in the political process. These people are either stupid, well, let me try this again. They're either ill-informed or ill-intended, trying to stay away from that stupid and evil thing because, now I have to be a politician. I'm so angry about this because this is going on in every state house. And we don't have the courage here in Minnesota amongst our elected representatives to stand up with the president and oppose this strategy. President Trump is deconstructing the post-World War II Democrat liberal order on every front. Ending the endless war is his goal. I don't know if he can get it done, but he's sure trying. Ending equitable outcomes by overturning the DEI addiction in our government and our military. And then the Green New Scam. Why can't we here in Minnesota and in your state follow along boldly with the president and undo these people's bidding, this paradigm? And I'm going to tell you why. You and I are not in the political process. We have to be delegates. We got to vet out the candidates, and we got to turf out the neocons that are into collaborating with the communists so that they can keep their dog bowls filled. I don't even think these people have a political ideology beyond what's in it for me. They're just self-serving. We need citizens that love this country, that love their families, and perhaps love God, so that we can refresh and restore honor to politics. The reason politics is dishonorable is because honorable people aren't practicing politics. When we don't do it, the worst assholes in the society go in there for money. And I could start naming them, and I'm going to, and I named some tonight. Now, money is part of politics. It just is. And President Trump is not immune from having to deal with this. In fact, he understands it far better than I do or most of the people listening to this podcast tonight. There's a concept called patronage. It's an old concept. It meant when there was a new king or a new president, he would put his people into place, put them on the payroll, patronage. Well, it's a little different now in the modern industrial world. The patronage goes to companies. So, for example, it was announced this past week that the much reviled BlackRock, we've spoken about this company, an integral part of creating the post-industrial world, had been allowed to buy the two Hong Kong-owned ports in Panama on either side of the Panama Canal. Oh, that's a nice concession. BlackRock bought those ports, and that was celebrated by the administration because they're putting BlackRock on the payroll. Doesn't really change who BlackRock is or who runs them. The president is doing the best he can to co-opt them. And I applaud him for that, as triggering as that is. Let's play number 6.
You've done this before. Huh? First time. They'll be nice. Hello, everybody. Hello, Peter.
President Trump, how are you today?
Star. You're a big star. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Mr.
Good
President.
job.
How are you?
Good job you're doing. Thank you very much. Today we're delighted to be joined by Rodolphe Sade, the chairman and CEO of CMA CGM, one of the largest shipping companies in the world, probably number 2 in the world, probably going to be number 1 in the not too distant future, knowing him. They employ over 160,000 employees. They have 750 major container vessels worldwide. And I'm thrilled to announce that he's going to be investing $20 billion into the United States because of the election results, which comes along with a lot of other things like great protections and other things. This massive investment will go toward building out shipping logistics, infrastructure, and terminals, which will create an estimated 10,000 new jobs in America. It's so important because it's about shipping. You know, we lost our way for many years. We haven't done anything. We used to build a ship a day, and now we essentially don't build ships. We're going to start that, and we're going to be announcing next week or the week after, a massive new program for building very large, the largest ships in the world. And it'll have to do with incentives, taxes. They'll be coming from all over the world, just like they are with cars, with what we've done with tariffs. And we have at least 7 new major car plants that are going to be starting very shortly because of what we're doing with the tariffs, which will primarily start on April the 2nd. Most of the tariffs go in April the 2nd. Right now we have some temporary ones and small ones on relatively small, although it's a lot of money, having to do with Mexico and Canada. But the predominant tariffs they'll be reciprocal in nature. They'll be going on April the 2nd, so we'll be talking about that. It'll be a big game changer for our country because we've been ripped off by every country in the world. And now whatever they charge us 150, 200%, and we charge them nothing. So whatever they charge us, we're going to charge them. And there'll be no getting out of it. So we look forward to April 2nd. I've been looking forward to that date for a long time. I had it as April 1st, but I didn't want to be hit for April Fool's Day. I'm a very superstitious person. So we made it April 2nd. It probably cost us a lot of money doing that, but it's okay. I feel better about it. And that'll be something very big. But I'd like to ask Rodolphe if you'd say a few words, please, about what you're going to do and also about the possibility of shipbuilding in our country. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yes, indeed, we are CMA CGM, one of the leaders in shipping and logistics around the world. We are very enthusiastic about this big announcement of today. We are investing $20 billion in shipping and logistics. This means the creation of 10,000 new American jobs. We're also looking at investing in shipbuilding of container vessels, and we most probably will be making also announcement in the next coming weeks. And we would like also, Mr. President, to go for more U.S. flag vessels, and we will go from 10 that we operate today to 30 U.S. flag ships, and hopefully doing more in the months to come. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, and congratulations on your great success. He's built with his father, before him, built one of the great shipping empires of the world. And that is, I never heard 750. It sounds like a lot to me, doesn't it, huh?
It is, Mr. President.
That's a fantastic company. Congratulations. Really great job. And a real honor to have you. Why is it that more people don't have American flags? They seem to have Panamanian flags and Liberian flags. They don't seem to have a lot of American flags.
But this will change, Mr. President. You will have more ships with U.S. flag as we move forward, and you can count on us to do as much as we can.
That's very good. It's true. Other countries take advantage of us even on that. So we're going to be changing that around, and I appreciate you coming up and even bringing it to our attention. It's really a great thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tanner.
Will?
Thank you very much. That is Rudolph Sadeh. He is the chief executive officer of a company called CMA CGA. It's a French company, one of the largest owners of container ships and ocean-going vessels involved in the movement of goods and raw materials around the world. I'm actually a contract holder with that company as part of the Target strategy. And I want to just say, this man is a member or a participant in the World Economic Forum. He's not the only person I know who participates in the World Economic Forum. I don't know this man personally. I know the people around him. But I know other people that are in that forum. And I go into it with this kind of prejudgment that they're all evil. And they're not. They're not. This fight that we're having, or this paradigm shift, it's shifting at every level of the entire society, the entire world. There are people that participate in the World Economic Forum that are not anti-human, that they are not down with this program like we have going on here in Minnesota, where we don't have enough energy to fuel our future needs, absolutely ensuring financial default. There's a lot of people in this forum that recognize that this is wrong, and they're trying to change it. So here comes a French citizen. Obviously, this was coordinated with President Macron of France. Here he is in the Oval Office talking about investing $20 billion, which seems like a big number. This annual income of this company is $55 billion a year. So, I mean, this guy's got the money. It's a privately owned company. And he's investing $20 billion in doing what? In supporting international trade by building out the investment in infrastructure here in the United States, adding 10,000 jobs, talking about increasing the number of vessels that are flagged with American flags. This man is the owner of the only American flagged vessels in the world. It's a company called APL, American President Lines. That company hauls all the military hardware around the world. He's talking about increasing that from 10 to 30 and investing in shipbuilding here in the United States to build these merchant marine vessels right here, right now. They're all built in Korea and Japan and China. President Trump's going back into the shipbuilding business. This is a positive thing. And when you change a paradigm, you're going to have disruptions. You're going to have a bunch of chattering heads talking about focus on your own dog bowl. Your prices are going up. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen because you can't predict the future beyond events that have never happened before. And this has never happened before. We've never had somebody stand up and say, we're going to change the post-World War II Democrat liberal order business paradigm. Well, it's ongoing. I do know where President Trump wants to go with this. He wants to pay down the debt. He wants to balance the budget. There is going to be some increase in some prices. But if energy gets lower cost and food becomes lower cost and tax rates are kept low or even lowered further, the amount of money that I have in my pocket will actually increase. And by having a border, having a country, getting out of the endless wars, and focusing on the peace and prosperity of the American people, when we get to the other side of this thing, there is a possibility that life will be a lot better for my children. So I tune out all these doomsayers and naysayers because what they really want is for a system that leads us to bankruptcy to continue. A system that is based on debt, slavery, drugs, and piracy to continue. That's what they're really advocating for. They're telling you worry about what you're paying for things, scaring you, telling you your Social Security is going to be ended, your Medicare and Medicaid is going to go away. I mean, these people are really resorting to the worst kind of fear-mongering. And interestingly, it's back to class warfare. It's back to class warfare. It's all about money for the billionaires. Hey, the billionaires don't need my money. They got their own. Is it possible that some of these billionaires, like Sade, actually care about the quality of this world? He might have children too. Maybe he cares. Maybe he can afford to care because he doesn't get up in the morning trying to figure out how not to go bankrupt like I do. Maybe he actually cares. Some of these people actually care. So, I'm advocating for a suspension of judgments because it says, judge not lest you be judged. And we have gone past a marker that's never happened before. And let's enjoy the ride. Let's get involved in politics and let's see these changes implemented and allow this awful slavery, drugs, and piracy business model to be changed. Or as President Trump said to black people, what do you got to lose? I mean, really, what do you got to lose? Because this sucks the way it is. I want to show you something that's still theater, but not quite as much theater as Al Green. Could you please play number 7?
All right, you got to check this out. What happened on the floor of Serbia's parliament today? It looked more like an intense clash between rival sports fans rather than a meeting of lawmakers. Take a look at this. This was unbelievable. Members of parliament set off air horns and threw smoke grenades and tear gas in clashes between the opposition and ruling majority. It was opening day of the spring session of parliament, and the chaos just erupted as the opposition party staged a protest in support for anti-corruption demonstrations. Now, one lawmaker held up a banner that read, "Serbia is rising up for the regime to fall." In the end, 3 members of parliament were injured, one of them suffering a stroke. Student-led anti-corruption protests have been going on for months now, sparked by the collapse of a train station roof last year, which killed 15 people. The movement has put intense pressure on the Serbian president and the government, and even prompted the prime minister to resign in January.
Well, that's a little bit less theater than Al Green standing there with his gold-headed cane, gold-handled cane. One man had a stroke, 2 other people were injured. That's a little bit getting close to live life. It's not quite like somebody walking in there and machine gunning the crew, but it was a little bit more intense. And we want to guard against that by damping down the rhetoric as best we can and getting involved in politics ourselves, because when people of goodwill enter the system and they listen to each other and talk to each other and remove these professionals who are really only interested in what's in it for them, when we remove those people, hey, things can get a lot more peaceful, a lot more unified. Hard to unify with people that believe that unity means it's all about them. That's tough to unify with. But unifying with fellow American citizens that care about our country, care about our families, care about freedom, care about the republic. Hey, yes, we don't have to agree on everything. We just need to unify for the good and the well-being of the people. And President Trump is doing something that I strongly support. And in the last 5 minutes, I want to talk about a state representative here, Mary Franson, who has made a big deal about criticizing transgender citizens very pejoratively. I'm not a supporter of transgenderism. I wouldn't want it for myself or for my children. But there are citizens that have chosen that road. And in a Republican form of governance, those citizens are free to be that way. That is how badass Republicanism is. Now, the argument was about, are men allowed to participate in women's sports? That's a reasonable policy conversation. But when it devolves into criticizing transgender people, it plays right into the hands of the left that wants to paint people in the Republican Party as being racist, xenophobic, anti-Semitic, homophobic. And I'm not, and I don't want my party to be. And if you have this much ire, Mary Franson and the rest of you elected representatives, for this kind of a lifestyle, why don't we respect those citizens and go after the University of Minnesota, where such ideology is thought up, enhanced, and then spread out as we send our kids generation after generation into the 175-year-old institution, which is our land-grant our land-grant university. This university here in our state and universities all over the country are incubators of leftism, which includes all these divergent ideologies which are in conflict with the traditional Republican form of governance here in the United States. That's why they've erected these, to be a wrecking ball for traditional culture. It's not that transgenderism is actually in conflict with republicanism. It's weaponized transgenderism, weaponized ideologies that are meant to tear our society apart. And it comes from campuses. So guess what? A little hint for our elected representatives here in Minnesota, and a little message to my daughter, who's a student at Columbia University. Members of the U.S. Joint Task Force to combat anti-Semitism, including the Department of Justice, Health and Human Services, Education, and the U.S. General Services Administration, announced this past Friday morning that $400 million in federal grants to Columbia University will be rescinded, citing the university's continued inaction in addressing anti-Semitism on campus. Quote, "These cancellations represent the first round of action, and additional cancellations are expected to follow," the task force wrote in a statement. Will that be because Columbia University receives $1.3 billion in annual federal funding from agencies like the National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation. That's called hitting them in the pocketbook, which I've been advocating. If we want to get into this thing and make it work, we're going to have to take on the communists in their centers of power. And none of these centers are more powerful than the universities where we send our children without thought, without effort to change, to modify what they're going to be learning in these alleged institutions of higher knowledge. Higher knowledge. Higher how? Higher or low? What does that mean? When you teach the children progressively, generation after generation, that America is a horrible place, that white people are horrible, that America needs to be fundamentally changed, that climate change is going to kill everybody. I mean, when we teach people these ideas, and I don't know if these people are ill-intended or ill-informed, I don't know, and I don't care. I know that you got to hit them in the pocketbook so that they modify their behavior, because these professors, when my father taught at university back in the 60s, he had to work for the city of St. Paul filling potholes to feed me. Now it's $200,000, $250,000, $300,000 a year. You work 6 hours a week, 6 hours a week, 4 class hours, 2 office hours, and you get the summers off, plus sabbaticals, plus tenure, which means you can never get fired, plus health care, plus retirement, to teach my kids to be communists. Really? Really? And, you know, we have a political class that is unwilling to take on the real issues. They want to sit and pick on this little symptom and that little symptom. This black person robbed a liquor store. This transgender man participated in women's sports. No, go after the root causes, and these symptoms will disappear. Go after the root causes. Don't stoke division in our society. Cut the head off the snake. And I'm going to tell you how easy it's going to be. When you threaten these folks with they can't make $200,000 a year for not working, like you're going to have to get down to $50,000 a year unless you give up teaching this kind of crap, they'll change. Every classroom will be red, white, and blue because they're in it for themselves. They're on the government payroll, and President Trump has proven it because he's cutting $400 million with more cuts to follow to Columbia University. And why did he start there? Because that's the center of the deal. That's where Henry Kissinger taught. That's where Hillary Clinton is on faculty. My daughter going to Columbia fractured my family because I was very resistant to it, and I refused to pay for it because I understand what it is. And I feel very vindicated today that the President of the United States is cutting their funding because I know what they're teaching my daughter, and it makes my blood boil. But of course, she feels she has to go there to get ahead in society. You see the trap we're in as parents? We want the best for our children. And my daughter went, and she was the valedictorian of her school, I think, or at the very top of her high school. Super talented, great athlete, speaks a foreign language fluently, great artist, smart. And Dad, I want to go to Columbia. Please don't go there. Well, actually, Bernard College, part of Columbia. Please don't go there. She wanted to go there because she sees that as her entryway into a very rich material life. And what parent is going to look at their child and say, don't do that? Well, I did, and it cost me. Because there are certain things I can't compromise on. Now, my daughter and I are talking, and I love her, and I wish the best for her. And we're trying to, educate her in traditional values. But she's assaulted with an ideology which demands her compliance if she ever wants to get a recommendation to go to graduate school. And President Trump is changing that now. And for that kind of massive paradigmatic shift, where we're saying the universities suck, think of the bravery in that. Now, one could say it's because of anti-Semitism, and I think that's probably part of it. But ending anti-Semitism on Colombia is not worth $400 million. That's a $4 million play, okay? For $4 million, they would have wisened up on that. No, this is much deeper than just anti-Semitism. It's the entire leftist ideology which governs that university. I remember when my daughter was trying to go there. Oh, it's got a fantastic Jewish studies department. Really? So I went and picked out a bunch of papers written by those academics that were in the Jewish studies department. Yeah, Jewish studies to those folks is Judaism is a cultural artifact. It has nothing to do with faith, after all. Faith, that's an anachronism. That's something that is old, something before the post-World War II Democrat liberal order took hold. It's not about teaching Jewish studies. Jewish studies to me would be how to become Jewish, which means faith. No, their thing was how to deconstruct it and understand it as a cultural manifestation. This is what our universities are doing. $37 trillion in debt, an open border, and an endless war. And no institution is more implicated in that abomination than Colombia. So thank you, President Trump. You've grabbed him, you hit him in the pocketbook, and that will cause change. Our president is changing the paradigm that governs the world. Please get involved in politics. Can't do it on his own. He just can't. And if this thing peters out on the way to the other side, we're going to drown. The revenge tour will be terrifying. So please, Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, join on X at Dan Schultz 2, the number 2, at Dan Schultz 2. Please repost the links, look at the shorts, send them out. Let's build this digital community. Follow me on X at Prof. Penn Podcast, on Getter at the Professor Penn Podcast. Let's get going. It's really coming soon, these midterms. We got to get organized. Conservative voices, conservative people, and leftist people coming together in a unity to do what? Bring our country peace and prosperity. That's the paradigm that's shifting. Slavery, drugs, piracy, shifting to peace and prosperity. Let's get there together. I want to thank you very much for joining tonight. I hope you're well. I wish you well. I hope you're enjoying the new set. We're experimenting with some new looks to try to build this audience. I want to thank you for being here. And Tanner, thank you also.
Of course. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night. Thank you very much.